Hey folks, welcome back to Gaming Garbage, where we take a look at games, chat about the gaming news in the industry, and of course stream for fun. Today we're talking about another state of gaming, where Nintendo is changing their business model. And it's not just like aspects of their company. I really think they have completely shifted to where they used to be as a gaming company and have focused now on their new model. So let's go ahead and dig into this. So we know that Nintendo has been a family affordable console, not for years, but for decades. Okay, since they launched in December 1984 in Japan. And I think it's clear that that's changing. And so we take a look at the Switch 2. Well, it's a 50% price increase from the previous one. We're at $450 compared to $300 from the Switch 1. And this isn't just because of tariffs. No, this is their own decision making off of how they've made and designed the Switch 2 and what they think it should cost and what they think customers will pay for. The tariffs themselves would have made it a lot more expensive. You know, maybe $600, maybe $700, depending on where their manufacturing is. But let's take a look at the tech that they're adding. We have 4K at 60 frames when it's docked, and we have 1080p at 120 hertz when it's in handheld. We have VRR and also VRAM. We also have 12 gigs of LPDDR5, which is pretty good stuff. For RAM, 12 gigs is a lot, honestly. That's a couple more than I think the Series S. That's quite a bit. We also have NVIDIA's Upscaler, DLSS, which, if you don't know exactly what that is, it's lowering the resolution, making it easier for the hardware to work and run stuff, and then bolstering it back up to the target resolution. And the idea is to increase the frame rate. And so that's been a bigger issue the last few years for a lot of folks, especially in this generation, is that they want a higher frame rate. They want like at least a stable 60. And, at 1080p on their handheld, they're shooting for 120, at least with their local games or their first party games. We also have a LCD screen, which is a better quality LCD, though it's not an OLED. You're still going to be able to see that change at 7.9 inches, which is quite a bit bigger than the original Switch one. We also have a built-in cooling fan now for the dock, and I imagine, pushing all of the juice and all of the stuff, trying to represent everything on screen with these increased resolutions and everything. I think it definitely probably needs that fan. We also have ray tracing implemented in our games now, not just first party, but also third party. And we also have those ray tracing cores for computing power. So that's really going to make the games look, I think, probably the biggest difference in graphical quality is the lighting, the reflections off of water or marble or whatever, and you'll be able to see that dynamic change in your graphics. As we've already seen in PC for quite a long time, as we've already seen in the current gen consoles of Xbox and PlayStation. But yeah, ultimately this is $450. The tariffs honestly would have made it more. But they're between Vietnam and the United States. There has been a deal now, currently at 10% instead of 46%, which is a heck of a lot better. Though you're still going to see that price increase. And Nintendo has said that they'll actually keep the consoles at launch for $450. So this doesn't mean that it won't go up in price, right? And the launch actually happened today, literally a few hours after I'm recording this, and we already have quite a few channels sowing their woes about how they weren't able to get one, how they were stuck in lines at Walmart, Target, and Best Buy, and GameStop, and wherever online, trying to actually grab one of these. And, I understand for a lot of them is for their channel. But the FOMO that Nintendo has purposefully created, I think, too, is pretty frustrating. And, they got you by the balls, man. They're manipulating you through the brand instead of the enjoyment of their actual console. Not saying that folks won't have a blast, that folks don't want one for legitimate reasons, right? But this FOMO is getting out of control. And so far now we've had 3 consoles in a row where this has been an issue since the supply chain problems during COVID in 21, 22, and even some into 23. And then, you got scalpers on top of it. So that's really just not making it better. But ultimately, Thinking about all of the stuff that we're getting with the Switch 2, it may be a fairly good price point for all of the stuff that's there, but players weren't asking for VRR. They weren't asking for an upscaler, ray tracing, and the price also that comes with it. And what do you think the OLED is going to be? $500? $550? Maybe the tariffs are going to be digging into the margin a little too much, so maybe it'll be $600 for an OLED screen version. I don't know, man. I mean, we probably don't have too long to wait, maybe 3 years from launch. So yeah, 2028 would be my guess to try to throw something out to compete, to kind of bring attention to them as PlayStation 6 and the next Xbox is coming out. But ultimately, Nintendo has priced out some people. And they used to be the affordable console. And now they're roughly the same price compared to the other consoles on the market. Also, too, it depends on where you live. Okay, there's been some changes. There's been updates to pricing for PlayStation, but so far, Xbox hasn't done that. So I'm expecting sometime this year for them to actually change things with tariffs, because their consoles, I'm pretty dang sure, are not made here. But yeah, I do find this pretty interesting. Also, too, let's talk about the games. We now have something called variable pricing, meaning that they can basically no longer have a standard. They just want to charge what they want to charge of what they think they can get away with. And this is now $70 to $90, depending on the game, digital, physical copy, and the edition that you're purchasing. There's also first-party games, but there's more Switch 2 editions of Switch 1 games at launch than actual first-party. When taking a look at the lineup for these games, the third-party lineup is huge for launch. So the first-party is just Mario Kart World. Like, that's it. I'm not even kidding. Like, go look up the list for launch. It is literally just Mario Kart World that they want to sell you for $80 as a digital game or $90 as a physical. The other three are Welcome Tour, which is $10. They shouldn't even be charging for that, in my opinion, since they've already set the precedent with the Wii back in the day. And then also the two Legend of Zelda games, which is Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Both of these are going to have Switch 2 enhancements, and so the Switch 2 editions are going to cost you, $70, $80 maybe, depending on exactly what the price is going to be and how you're going to buy it if you want that physical copy as well. But what I think is nuts is, like, the Tears of the Kingdom doesn't even come with a DLC. And you're paying how much? Like, it honestly just kind of blows my mind. When we take a look at the third party, we're looking at Cyberpunk, Fortnite, Hitman, Hogwarts Legacy, Civilization 7, Split Fiction, Sonic X, Shadow Generations, Street Fighter 6, Yakuza 0. And these are just the big ones. There's actually more titles that are going to be ready at launch. Even the directs, they've pushed way more third party than their own stuff. We still had Donkey Kong Bonanza, we still had Metroid Prime 4, but and we know that, a couple of Pokemon games are coming. We have Legend ZA, and we also have Pokemon Champions. But it's just surprising how much they've actually pushed third party. And more people are excited for the third party, generally speaking, than a lot of the other stuff. So yeah, it's just kind of crazy. It's like we've gotten raised prices. We got a 50% increase on the console. We have a third-party lineup instead of a first-party lineup. Again, for launch, it's just one first-party game. That's it. And, taking a look at this, it's like I believe the 4K and the DLSS upscaler from NVIDIA and the ray tracing, I don't think it's for the first-party stuff. Because the first-party doesn't need that. We never expected that, right, for first-party. But they've pushed it pretty far. I really think this is for the third-party. Because Nintendo doesn't, again, need this for their first party, but they would for Cyberpunk. Because if you're going to want to say, hey, you can buy the third-party game on our console, well, Nintendo likes the 30% they're going to make off of that. They're going to get some free profit with pretty much no risk. But they're going to need to be able to run the game somewhat competitively against the other consoles that are already out there for the next several years until we get to next-gen stuff. And so Cyberpunk is a great example. Okay, if you could only run it at 1080p at 30 frames with no ray tracing, the game would look like crap. No one's going to want to play that, really. And so it's like, okay, we're going to have upscalers to get us to that 4K, to aim for that, above 30 frame rate. They're aiming for 40 frames per second, not 60. 60 is just going to be for the first party stuff for Nintendo and maybe some other games that are simpler to run and aren't going to be as demanding. But it's like, to be competitive, to get people to get that 30% from the third party games that sell on their consoles, they're going to need to prove that they can run the game pretty well. So I feel like they're adding all of that stuff on purpose just for the third party stuff. Mario Kart doesn't need ray tracing, doesn't need 4K. Donkey Kong Bonanza, the next Super Smash game, if they ever make one. I mean, let's be real here. None of that actually is needed or really would help improve the games, I feel like, too much. Because, again, the level of detail in the art design and the animations just aren't there. It would go wasted. It wouldn't be appreciated. Also, too, we get to see the paywalling, which is pretty different from Nintendo. Now, of course, they've had some paywalling before, but I really feel like this is next level. And they're putting a lot of stuff behind the Nintendo Online service or the expansion pass that you have to pay for every month, like Xbox Live or PSN. So they're putting game chat, probably too the camera use, the Switch 2 editions of their games, the backwards compatibility list outside of Switch 1 games. So like your N64 and your NES and your Super NES and your GameCube now. All of that is paywalled. Also, the GameCube controller that they're making for the Switch 2, that's wireless. Really nice, but again, it's like I don't want to pay. I think it's going to be like $60, $65 for a GameCube controller that you can only use on Switch 2, that you can only use for 3 GameCube games at launch. Now, they're going to add more, of course, but you can't use the controller to play other games, just the GameCube ones. So it's like, okay, why am I spending $60, $65 to play 3 games? Probably through the rest of this year. It doesn't really make a ton of sense. Maybe we'll get a few more. I certainly hope so. But they're going to make sure their launch goes well. They're going to make sure their first-party stuff coming out, like Legends EA, is going to be as good as they possibly can, and deal with tariff issues if they have those still. They're going to be dealing with that more often than just the GameCube stuff. And simply, they're charging more because they can charge more. They know they can get away with it. Again, this is just price hiking to price hike. So ultimately, I feel like Nintendo is no longer the affordable, but now premium console. And I think that's kind of disgusting. I really think it's unnecessary, because I think the biggest reason why players and gamers and families or whatever have a Nintendo is because it's been affordable for forever. I mean, we've never seen a more than $50 price increase from the previous gen. And we have a $150 price increase from the previous gen. And then we're also seeing an increase from $60 all the way to $70, $80, $90 for our games. We're also seeing price increases for our accessories, like Joy-Con 2s are now $95 a pair. That's literally the most expensive game controller, the base game controller by far. And they're probably not easy to fix. They're not going to have Hall effect joysticks. Man, I mean, that to me, that's starting to be a tough sell. And so, yeah, they're really coming off as a premium brand. And that's what they're selling you. They're selling you the brand. They're selling you, the opportunity to play third-party stuff. And there's way more coming in third-party. It's pretty insane what's coming. But you look at their first-party stuff, and it's like, okay, we have 2 Pokemon games. We have several Switch 2 editions. We have Mario Kart World. That's kind of it. Oh, Metroid Prime 4. But it's like, there's no Pikmin. There's no Star Fox. There's no Super Smash. There's no word of the next Legend of Zelda game, even though it's been a few years since the last one came out. And we got a couple of Pokemon games, but again, I don't think they're that crazy of games, honestly. No one's really talking about them anymore. So, yeah, it's just like, what are we really buying? I'm buying for all of the graphical upgrades, 12 gigs of RAM, bigger screen, the cooling fan, be able to have ray tracing, be able to use VRR and VRAM, 4K at 60 docked, 180p at 120. Okay, that sounds more competitive stuff than actually providing me something that I can play first-party games on. And it just feels backwards. We'll see if people really enjoy this. Right now, there's a lot of people saying, yeah, I'm trying to get a Switch 2, and they've been complaining about it for the last month. And they're still trying to buy one. But, honestly, I'll be surprised if the Switch 2 sells 100 million units during its life cycle. Switch 1 sold 152, I think. So yeah, I think they'll get about 66, 67% of their previous amount of sales for last gen. Because I just don't see the benefit. People right now are going off of FOMO, going off the fact that it's Nintendo. Nintendo knows they have the branding power, but I think if the players are ultimately going to feel screwed when they start really seeing the cost accumulating of how much it's going to be expensive for them, I think some people are going to tap out. And some people, they'll have to choose which console they're going to focus on. Again, it's been the affordable console. So someone, console users, they go out and get their PlayStation or they go out and get their Xbox. And then they buy the Switch later. Or the Wii U or the Wii or whatever. And it becomes a secondary console. And I don't think Nintendo wants to be that anymore. They feel threatened, maybe, that they need to compete. Not just against the consoles, but also against the handheld market. Which why I think their screen at 120 hertz and 4K is trying to be competitive. Right now, the Steam Deck is, I think, 720p or 1080p for handheld. But I don't think it's at 120. I'd have to look. I don't have one. Leave it down in the comments if you know. But yeah, I just think this is interesting to see what Nintendo's doing. But I think it's clear that they've changed their business model. And I don't think they're going back anytime soon. And so for personally myself, I'm not getting a Switch 2. No, not just for launch. Just period. I mean, we have our old games that we like. We have our old Wii U sitting in the corner. And yeah, we still have all of the Wii controllers. And I mean, that's what we're going to stick with. That's what my kids are going to grow up on. But man, just seeing the stuff that Nintendo's doing, I don't appreciate it as a customer. I also feel partly priced out. And, for people that can afford it, hey, that's great. I'm glad life's going good for you. But it just feels crazy manipulative. So with that, folks, you can always find me at Gaming Garbage 22 over at YouTube. You can also check out our playlists and stuff. There's a lot there. Gaming news, deep dives in the industry, playthroughs, reviews when I can do them. And then, too, you can also follow me at Twitch at Don't Tread on Thee. And while I'm playing games and stuff, I'll certainly chat with you guys. If I'm doing the news or deep dives, I won't engage with the chat. But other than that, what are you guys going to do? Take some time to think about all this. Because I think Nintendo knows they have their consumer base by the balls, but what are they really giving you? With that, folks, I'll see you guys on the next one.